Brian, and I play the bass with the Akron Symphony Orchestra. The bass goes by many different names. It's the bass, it's also a double bass, contrabass, upright bass, stand-up bass, bass fiddle, bass violin, bull fiddle, and maybe my favorite, because I don't understand where this came from, but every so often you'll find somebody who calls it the doghouse. You've probably already met the bass's smaller relatives, the violin, viola, cello. There are many similarities between those and the bass, but the bass is so much bigger, which allows it to play the lowest notes in the string section. Like the other stringed instruments, the basses tend to have 4 strings. But sometimes you can find one that has a 5th string, which usually goes extra low. Often you'll find a 4-string bass that has an attachment on the top, which allows the player to hit those extra low notes without having to worry about an entire extra string. Now, you may have already learned that stringed instruments in the orchestra can be played by either plucking the string, which is called pizzicato, or bowing, which is called arco, or just simply bowing. Because of the giant body on the bass, when we pluck the strings, it can really sound huge, and it rings longer than the other stringed instruments. Now, because of this, basses are often called to play pizzicato more than the other strings. It almost sounds like a timpani drum, which, if you haven't learned about those yet, you will pretty soon. Now, the bass can be found in just about every kind of music, although it doesn't always look the same. You're probably more familiar with the upright bass's smaller cousin, the electric bass. Sometimes certain music requires one kind of bass over the other, and they're not always interchangeable. Basses can be found in orchestra music, obviously, jazz, bluegrass, blues, rock, funk, even polka. The bass's primary job is to help hold things together. We play the lowest note, usually, and all of the other notes fit on top of that, but we also very often have to keep the rhythm. Sometimes it's just a very simple, repetitive rhythm. And other times it can be a little more interesting with different rhythms and maybe melodic lines. Sometimes we even get a chance to play a full-on melody or solo, but most of the time we're pretty content to just stay off to the side and play a supportive role. Imagine you had to carry this to a concert. Today we have large vehicles that can handle a bass, or smaller cars have seats that fold down and can make room. But if you were a bass player in maybe the 1800s, you'd probably have to carry your bass everywhere, or maybe put it on a horse-drawn coach, but more than likely just carry it. Even when cars were invented, for whatever reason, they did not design a space specifically to store your double bass. So even then, bass players had to get creative, and you might see a bass with the neck just sticking right out the window, or maybe even tied to the roof. And even today, there are many old basses that do not have the original neck, and probably because of some sort of mishap while transporting them. Jazz players spend most of their time playing pizzicato. Now, in the early 20th century, when jazz was really taking off, bass players found themselves having to work really, really hard to try to be heard over a line of saxophones and trumpets, trombones, and there's a drum set over there, and they were trying to find different ways to sound louder so that they could be heard through the texture of the band. Some players developed a way to slap the strings, which added not only a little bit of volume, but the sound of the snap added an interesting rhythm texture to the band. But most of the time, the players just had to play hard. This gets tiring. In an orchestra, we use several bass players, and we're all playing the same thing in order to be heard. The more players, the louder the part that they are playing will be. So in other music, there's almost always just one bass player. Jazz players tried different approaches to try to get more sound. And then in the early 1950s, a man named Leo Fender developed a design of a portable bass that looked an awful lot like a guitar and solved three very important challenges for bass players. It was able to plug into an amplifier, and suddenly the bass player could be heard. 2, it was very portable, so now it could be placed in the trunk of a car and carried up steps. And 3, it has the same markings on the fingerboard that a guitar has to show the player just where to put their fingers. This made playing in tune so much easier, and the instrument was a huge success. This new electric bass, as well as Mr. Fender's design for an electric guitar, helped give birth to rock music, and the electric bass remains the bass of choice for rock and everything that came afterwards. The upright bass is still the instrument of choice for traditional jazz and bluegrass because it does have a very, very unique sound that you just cannot get on an electric. But you can play any style of music on any bass. Upright basses can play rock. And classical music can be played on an electric bass. Now, you may be looking at these things wondering just how in the world could I play something that massive? If you are interested in playing the bass, please don't let the size of it scare you off. Basses today are made in a wide variety of sizes, and I have even heard of some kids getting their start on a cello tuned like a bass, and playing that and learning the fundamentals until they get a little bit taller. There's even a super tiny bass ukulele, which has the same notes as a bass, but obviously much more manageable. And it has this really neat acoustic sound. But it can also be plugged in and sound absolutely huge. Each one of you out there can play any instrument that you want, any style of music that you want. Don't let anybody go telling you otherwise. And girls, don't get some silly idea that the bass is just a boy's instrument, or any other instrument, or really anything for that matter. I've played with so many women in bass sections in almost every orchestra that I've been in. And guys, there's no such thing as a girl's instrument. Maybe playing music isn't your thing, and that is more than okay. You find whatever things it is that make you happy, and you go for it. It doesn't just have to be one thing either. Whether it's writing, or swimming, sports, photography, painting, building something, fixing engines. Doesn't matter. Whatever you love to do, go for it. Good luck in school this year and beyond. Have fun, learn a lot, be safe. Go listen to some music you've never heard before. And follow your heart with whatever it is that you love to do. Figure it out and go for it. You never know when that one little activity in school that you thought seemed like it could be maybe possibly kind of a little interesting could end up years later in you making a kind of awkward video on that very subject. Thanks for watching, and have a great year. Bye. Today we have large instruments. Today, many basses are built. And the electric bass is the choice for rock music and all of the take two. Today we have large vehicles that can fatal. Eat. We'll wait for the garbage truck to pass. Still waiting. So I hope that these.